In this lesson, we're going to add more detail to this facade, and we're going to start cutting out the entrance and looking at some of the edging that needs to be done around this facade. So what I'm going to do is look at the front facade in an isolated view, in my front view. And the first thing that I noticed when I was reviewing this is that I saw that the edge of the window where the wall puncture is actually on this line here. So we need to move this base geometry just to align with that wall and not with the outside of the molding. So I'm going to select one of the common floors, which is the one that has been instanced. And I'm just going to select the left edges. And I'm just showing you right now as to how quickly the whole building can be updated. By just dragging the edges and then pushing it across by 0.2, which is the width of the molding. I had to measure that ahead of time, so I knew what height this was off the ground, and I know the width of this molding. So you can make those measurements manually using the measure tool or looking back in the AutoCAD files so that you have an idea of what are the basic proportions of your facade. Now you'll see that just by doing those few edits, the whole building has been modified, except for the top and bottom, as well as the penthouse floor, since those are the ones that were copied and not instanced. So what I'm going to do now, very quickly, is I will quickly pause the video and just move up and down those few vertices for us so that we can get on with the rest of the cutting and trimming that's going to happen now. There we go. So that took about an extra minute of time just to update that top and bottom layer. So now across the entire facade, I have the polys set up so that each floor level has its own plane with the window cutouts all in place. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out this arc and then basically push back this facade, which actually is the entrance, which is slightly deeper in the building. So first thing, I know that I don't need these two right-hand side objects right now because I'm going to work on this left side and then mirror it once it's complete. So what I can do now is I'm going to create a circle and then cut out the arc which is forming this entrance area. So what I'm going to do is I'll start in this corner and I'll draw a circle to there. I'm going to isolate that and go across to my splines and draw a circle. I'm going to turn on the snap tool, and that's the circle. Over here, I'm just going to lift this up slightly so that it's out the way. And if we look in our perspective view, we can now go and extrude this slightly and then just move it back so that it's clearly intersecting with our object. Then with your compound object selected, go to Boolean. I usually use, you can use subtraction or intersection. I usually like to use refine since it is usually gives me quite good results. And once that has been done, you can go right click, convert to editable poly again, and then once you select your polygon, you can then go and detach this, detach those polys. So I'm going to hit detach, and that is now going to be a separate object. If you like, you can go and target weld this down to there. Just know that that little segment is going to be very, very narrow. So hopefully it won't give us any problems later. So once I go out of my isolation, I'm just going to re-isolate my facade. And in the front view, you'll see now that that object has been detached. So that's going to be our entrance. And we need to do the same thing here. So I'm going to grab these polys here and then detach that as well. Great, so now with this object and this object, I can go and attach these two because they will actually form the back window that we see here through that entrance. So with that done, I can then go and select these vertices and I need to weld them together since it's showing me 6 and there should only be 3. So you can just hit weld and it'll jump back to 3 vertices. So those two objects have now been joined into one proper object. Now, the next thing to do with this window facade is to move the horizontal lines into the correct places. So, for example, here we want this to be in line with the door openings and the window frames. So we can basically set up all of that. This one we're not going to move because it will otherwise disturb this geometry here. So what we'll do is we'll go and connect that together. Let's just Control Z that. Let's connect with one segment this time. And we can go and look at the Y value here, copy that, and I'm just going to manually paste in these values. If you are in View and not in World, then I'll need to use the different, it's actually the Z that I should be using. So let's go and use the Z this time, since we're in a different alignment. And that basically gives me my horizontals. Now I need to do the verticals. And this one, again, same thing as the other situation. We want to move it across, but we can't move this segment here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select one of these, and I'm just going to select these two and connect those, and then select to this edge and remove it. And then manually, if you would like to make sure that you don't go off arc or off your object, you can just use a edge restraint, which is something I like to use quite often. And then I just manually go and align that. You can do this perfectly if you like by looking at the coordinates and then copy pasting those. But I'm just going to do this quite quickly so that we don't waste any time here. Same thing, I'm going to connect. That's going to shoot a line straight up there. That's nicely in the middle. And then I'm just going to do the same thing here. We want to join. We want to make sure that so you want to take the x coordinate of this one, and we want to take this line here and then just manually paste that coordinate. Now it has gone down, so here I am kind of cheating a little bit by messing up the form, but I'm not really too concerned about it. So just to segment it up even more, I need to now go and create a segment here, but I can't do that because there's one segment intersecting. So I'm going to connect these two, go to my vertices and use target weld, weld those two together, select these two, and connect those. So by doing those couple of connects, recuts, alignments, what I've done is I've basically created my base mesh, which will form the entire window, including the frames. So this object we can also go and mirror, but I see that my center point has now moved off that center axis. So what you can do is you can have a look at what the X value is for that center. In this case, it's this number here. So I'm going to copy that, and I will go into my pivots and adjust my pivot to be, actually my pivot is there, so that should be fine. So if we go and mirror this object and instance it to the other side, it's actually fine. It did mirror correctly. So the pivot point was in fact in the middle. So that's great. And we can go and do the same thing to these two objects. We can go and mirror those across and make sure that that's instanced. So there you have it. That has just been a little bit more detail. We've looked at how we can edit the facade, and we've looked at how we can start cutting out these objects. Now in the next lesson, we will look at how to add the banding around the window edge, and we're going to do that quite simply because we have the sections on the side. So we will set up the splines, we will sweep all those across, and we will look at how to do some of those lathes and sweeps in the next video.